The sun sagged low over the barren horizon, bleeding red light across the dying land where silence had long since replaced the laughter of working hands. The ranch stood at the edge of nowhere, a forgotten patch of earth scorched by drought and time. Fence posts leaned like weary soldiers. The barn's paint flaked away by dust storms, and the fields that once rippled gold with wheat now lay cracked and gray. Inside the small wooden house, an old man coughed weakly, his strength drained by illness and worry. His debts had piled high, and the men he owed, Colt Merrick, was on his way to collect. The stories of Colt were known in every saloon and trading post across the frontier. They said he was born of fire and iron, that he'd built his empire by breaking others, and that when he came for what was his, mercy never rode with him. The rumble of hooves grew louder in the distance, steady, certain, like a drumbeat announcing judgment. On the porch stood the old man's daughter, her figure small but unyielding against the wind. Her hands trembled at her sides, not from fear but from the weight of what she was about to do. She had seen the ledgers, counted the coins, and knew there was no saving the ranch. But she also knew her father was too frail to face the men who would come to take everything. So, she stood there, her heart pounding, waiting for the dust cloud to form at the end of the road. The sound of Colt Merrick's horse filled the air before his shadow appeared. He rode like a storm, tall in the saddle, his coat black with travel dust, hat pulled low over eyes that had seen too much. When he reined in at the gate, silence swallowed the ranch. He dismounted slowly, the heavy jingle of his spurs breaking the stillness. His voice, when he spoke, was cold and measured. "Where's your father?" he asked, gaze sharp beneath the brim of his hat. The woman's throat tightened, but she steadied herself. "Inside," she said softly. "He's sick." Colt nodded once, but his tone stayed hard. "Debt's due today. No sickness changes that." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper, the deed that could erase a lifetime of work. $600. Overdue by 2 months. You know the law. The wind whipped her hair into her face, but she didn't flinch. "We don't have it," she admitted. "But please, don't take the land. It's all he's got left." Colt's jaw tightened. He borrowed knowing the risk. "You think I built what I have by forgiving debtors?" Her eyes glistened, but she didn't back down. "Maybe you built it by forgetting you were once one of them." For a heartbeat. His expression faltered, just a flicker. But then he straightened, hard again. "Pack what you can. I'll have the deed signed by sundown." She stepped forward suddenly, her voice shaking but her resolve steel. "Then take me instead." The words hit him like a slap. His head turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Take me in place of the land. Work me, use me, whatever payment you want, just spare him." The air went still. Even the wind seemed to pause in disbelief. Colt stared at her, as if trying to decide if she was mad or brave, or both. "You think I'd take a woman as payment?" he asked, voice low, almost dangerous. "I don't know what you'd take," she whispered. "But I know you're about to destroy a man who's already dying. You don't need his land, Mr. Merrick. You just need to win." The words sank deep, sharper than any blade. He looked at her again, really looked, saw the tears trembling but unshed. Saw the dirt-streaked hands that had done a man's work for a father who couldn't. Saw the courage that refused to bow. For a long time, neither of them moved. The only sound was the faint cough from inside the house and the creak of the weathered porch. Colt turned his gaze to the broken fence, to the house barely standing, to the old man behind the walls. He had seen this before, his own father's ranch, years ago. Before it was taken from them by men who smiled while they ruined him. He had vowed then to become the kind of man no one could destroy. And he had. But in becoming that man, he'd killed something human inside himself. "Get him," he said finally, voice rougher now. She blinked, uncertain. "What?" Your father, he repeated. Bring him out. He deserves to hear this. She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared into the house. Moments later, she returned with the old man, frail and trembling, leaning on her shoulder. The sight made Colt's jaw clench. Samuel Hart, once a name that carried weight in the valley, now reduced to a shadow of himself. The old man met Colt's stare with weary eyes. You come to finish me off, Merrick, he rasped. If you're gonna take the land, do it fast. I've got no fight left in me. Colt said nothing at first. He held out the deed between two fingers, then looked back at the woman standing protectively beside her father. You owe $600, he said. You can't pay. By law, this land's mine. The old man nodded slowly. Then take it. Nothing left worth saving. Colt looked at him long and hard. Then suddenly, without warning, tore the deed in half. The old man's eyes widened. The woman gasped. Colt tore it again and again, until the paper was nothing but scraps carried off by the wind. Debt's gone, he said quietly. You keep your land. For a moment, there was only silence. The old man's hand trembled. Why, he managed to whisper. Colt looked down at the torn fragments spinning away into the dust. Because I once watched my father beg for the same mercy, he said. His voice rough. No one gave it. Maybe it's time someone did. The woman's breath hitched. Her heart a storm inside her chest. I don't understand, she said softly. You should have taken everything. Colt's gaze met hers again. And this time, the hard edge was gone. If I did, he said, I'd be no better than the men who ruined my family. I'd rather walk away with nothing than live knowing I became them. He turned then, moving to his horse. His boots crunched on the dry earth. Take care of him, he said over his shoulder. And don't let anyone tell you Mercy's weakness. Sometimes it's the only thing that makes a man strong. He swung into the saddle, adjusted his hat, and without another word, rode off into the fading light. Dust trailed behind him like ghosts, rising, then settling again over the land he chose not to claim. She watched him go until he was no more than a blur against the horizon. The sound of hooves fading into silence. Behind her, her father's voice broke. He spared us, the old man whispered. No, she murmured, her eyes still fixed on the sunset. We spared him. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of dry earth and hope, the first faint scent of rain in months. And though the sky stayed cloudless, something inside her changed, as if the drought had finally broken. Weeks passed. The ranch healed little by little, and every now and then, she'd see a lone rider in the distance, just far enough to remain a mystery, but close enough to remind her that not all debts are measured in coin. Some are measured in kindness. In the moments when one heart saves another from turning to stone. The locals still spoke of Colt Merrick, the ruthless rancher who spared a dying man's land, though no one could explain why. But those who saw him afterward said something in him had softened, that the men who once rode for profit now rode for peace. And somewhere, beneath the endless sky, two souls who had crossed in the dust of despair carried with them the memory of that day when Mercy rode in silence. Because sometimes redemption doesn't arrive in grand gestures, it comes quietly, with a whisper, with a plea that says, just spare him.